I had a guest actually come on this podcast before Jimmy Carr. Jimmy Carr was on 2 weeks ago, and we had a great conversation about happiness and the nature of happiness. And the guest before Jimmy Carr wrote in my diary, which is a tradition we have now, where all the guests that come on write a question for the next guest. So there is a question in there for you. But the guest wrote a question which changed his life, which is, are you happy? And from reading your work and understanding your position on happiness and it not being the thing to aim for, which really struck me, because I thought, I thought life was the North Star of our lives was to try and be happy. Mm-hmm. I guess my question is, I was going to ask you that question.
Aim to be good and pray for happiness.
So the question is pretty much that is, what is a better question for me to ask you if I'm checking in on you? Because we asked that question with good intentions. Mm-hmm. Are you happy? What's a better question for me to ask Jordan Peterson?
How are you doing?
How are you doing? How are you doing?
Brilliantly and terribly. That's when you listen to a profound piece of music, one that sort of spans the whole emotional experience, it's not happy. Happy is elevator music, and probably you just shouldn't listen to that at all, right? And you think, why? Well, it's harmless, it's treacly, it's sweet, it's simple, it lacks depth, it's shallow, that's a problem. It doesn't have that deep sense of awe and horror, I would say, that is characteristic of the best of all music. You listen to some simple music, so-called. Hank Williams is a good example. The blues cowboy from the 50s who died of alcoholism when he was 27 and whose voice sounds like an 80-year-old man. Simple melody, but there's nothing simple in the song and in the voice. It's deep, it's like the blues. It's like black blues in the States from the 20s, and this was certainly influenced by that tradition. There's this admission of a deep suffering at the same time as you get the beautiful transcendence of the music. And that's meaning, that's awful in the most fundamental sense, but you need an antidote to suffering, and it has to be deep. And deep moves you tectonically, and it's not a trivial thing. But that's better than happiness. And maybe if you're lucky while you're pursuing that and while you're immersed in it, you get to be happy, and you should fall on your knees and be grateful for that when it happens. It's a gift. It really is a gift. And it comes upon you unexpectedly, your happiness, But you aim to climb uphill to the highest peak you can possibly envision. And that's better than happiness.
Why did you include terribly?
Well, for example, now when I go, wherever I go in the world, people come up to me and they're usually, I wouldn't say they're happy to see me. They're often in tears, and they often have a pretty rough story to relate. They were suicidal or nihilistic or homicidal or trapped, desperate, and they tell me that real fast. And then they say, I've overcome that to a large degree, and thank you for that. And you think, well, that's really something to have that happen over and over. In some ways, you might think, well, how could anything better possibly happen to you than to have people come up to you all over the world, strangers, and open themselves up like that, like they're old friends so quickly. But at the same time, it's an awful thing, because you see, even in the revelation of their triumph, the initial depth of their despair. So I wouldn't change that. But it's not nothing. And it's certainly not just happiness. It's better than happiness, but it's almost unbearable. God, tears again.